Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets, to bodybuilding, to life philosophy, and everything in between. Enjoy the show. Are you looking to lose fat, gain muscle, or improve your health, or all of the above? Interested in working with me one-on-one? Stop spinning your wheels, because I offer personalized coaching where I can help you reach your goals, whether it be fat loss, muscle building, improving your health, or all of the above. I provide tailored nutrition, training, and supplementation advice, one or all of them together, with 24/7 ongoing support to help guide you every step of the way. You can email me at scott.mize@gmail.com. Click the link in the description of this episode to schedule your free consult call to go over your goals, answer questions with no obligation. Let's take your physique or health journey to the next level. This episode is brought to you by Optimal Carnivore. A lot of people ask me about organ meats. Do you need to eat organ meat? How do I eat organ meat? And Optimal Carnivore was created by carnivores for carnivores. They created a unique organ complex from grass-fed animals in New Zealand. It includes 9 different organs: liver, brain, heart, thymus, kidney, spleen, pancreas. And taking just 6 capsules is the same as eating an ounce of raw organ meat from the butcher. I've been personally using Optimal Carnivore for years. My wife and I use it almost every single day. It's great when I don't have fresh organs available, don't feel like eating them, don't feel like cooking them, or if I'm traveling, I know I can get a variety of super high quality organs daily. And they have lots of different products, from their beef liver product to their organ complex to their brain product and their bone and marrow product. They have excellent products filled with highest quality ingredients, and you can get 10% off your order and support the show by going to the link in the description of this episode and using the code Carnivore10 at checkout. That's Carnivore10 to save and support the show. Thank you. Jonathan Griffiths returns to the podcast today at composition_consultant on Instagram. He's a successful carnivore bodybuilder and brilliant nutrition consultant who helps people get in their best shape of their lives while getting healthier at the same time. He has been in the nutrition industry studying carefully for nearly 15 years. He's also undertaken several courses surrounding human health, including medical science and a nutrition and herbal science certification. He has been using the most up-to-date scientific literature and experience from working with hundreds of individuals with unique health situations. Jonathan puts out tons of free and valuable information on his Instagram and YouTube channel, both under the handle Composition Consultant. Welcome back, Jonathan.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me. It's nice to get around to part 2. We're in the works for a little while now, but I'm glad to be able to do it. And under your new setup, your new format of podcasting, so I'm glad to be part of this.
Yeah. The podcast name has changed, but the content and the format are hopefully very similar for folks. But first, I wanted to say congratulations on reaching 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. I know that was a big milestone for you and a lot of work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's as much as like it's good to do interviews, and what I find funny is you spend a lot of time making these videos that are like 10 minutes long. Sometimes you wish I spoke to an expert who specializes in this one thing to go through it for an hour, but it's good fun. I'm glad to be able to do it.
Yeah. And I've found your videos really interesting, like the different topics you cover, folks you interview. You really go into some of the like topics of bodybuilding that not a lot of other people are covering, bodybuilding and diet. And so I found it really fun to follow along and watch your videos.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I tried to go into the details where I can, but I'm kind of trying to cross that bridge, I guess, with the bodybuilding / carnivore diet fitness kind of space.
Yeah.
I know the purpose of your channel's pretty similar, I'm guessing. So we're trying to do something very, very niche, very unusual, but I think that there is a way to do it, so.
Absolutely. And one thing that's been cool is you've been like interviewing a lot of bodybuilders, IFBB pros, and people who do carnivore and bodybuild. So I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of the differences you see in people doing bodybuilding using a carnivore approach, like in terms of their outcomes, in terms of their health, in terms of the sustainability? What are some of the things you've learned from talking to folks?
I think a lot of the times the mindset changes. Typically, the average bodybuilder is thinking, okay, if I do more, I'll get more out of it. But as we know, we age, our bodies aren't the same as they were a decade ago. So we have to kind of tape things back a bit. Well, sometimes not taper it back, just change it. So we have to change how we apply ourselves in the gym, how we manufacture our, diet practices, things like that. Some key points I'd say is the people that bodybuild on a carnivore diet tend to be happier because they're healthier. They're not spending an extra $200 per month on kidney stack support supplements and liver health and this, that, and the other. So it's interesting, like people sort of align bodybuilding with being healthy, but then by default they're sort of saying, well, I'm not actually healthy because I have to spend $200 a month on, all these like vitamin, mineral supplements and things to make the kidneys work better, flush, detox stuff. So yeah, it seems like a simple approach and cheaper approach. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. Bodybuilding can be something that improves our health a lot, can also be something that takes over our lives, and makes us less healthy. So it's awesome to see people doing it in a way that is both health promoting and getting them to whatever their physique goals are at the same time and enjoying it. That's huge.
Exactly. Yeah.
And another thing that I've seen on your channel is, you've talked a lot with Bart K and others about like different forms of training, time under tension. How has your training philosophy evolved? Well, maybe start with like how your training started and how it's evolved over the last several years, and then more recently in the last year or so, what are some things you've learned, some things you've tried, and found effective?
Oh yeah. So I started like a lot of people in the gym, just, 2, 3 sets of this, 2, 3 sets of that. Almost going around the circuit, you do your bicep curls, you do your chin ups, pull ups, your crunches, and you go on the treadmill for half an hour, have a little run or whatever. It worked to a point, but I think I never really applied that intensity until maybe the last few years. And I'd say started off maybe doing 30 sets per workout when I was about 15 years old, 14 years old. I'm doing like between 6 and 10. But what I'm doing in that 6 to 10 working sets is working sets. So it's doing hard work. So it's intensity, it's hard. So I'm not doing 15, 20 sets anymore. You just can't. When you train to this level of intensity, it's not possible. Now, could I do it? Yes, but then I'd end up hitting the muscles less frequently. So for me, more now, 6 to 10 sets, zero warm ups unless I feel like I have to for some reason. And just every set's as pretty much as hard as I can take it, within limits of doing it safely, strict form, things like that. What else? I kind of want to say, I like to train like a lot of people that I love bodybuilding. I love going to the gym. So for me, I could do 15, 20 sets per workout, but I'd only be doing 2 workouts per week. So there's so much anticipation between each workout. So I think I found a good flow now, 3, 4, maybe on a very rare occasion, 5 sessions per week, 6 to 10 sets, hard sets, just semi-intuitive, semi-instinctive, like how I train. I still track things, log things, have an idea in my head of how I'm going to go about achieve my goals through bodybuilding, but at the same time, I want to enjoy it as well. So sometimes I'll think my calves are pretty smashed. I'm going to give it another few days to train them again. But sometimes I think, you know what, they're not sore from the last workout, and I've built up strength recently, so I'm going to, going to do it again. I'm going to clean them again. So kind of how I go about it nowadays.
Interesting. And how has the way you train clients or you recommend training for clients changed as well over the last several months, years?
Another good question. Yeah. So I think when I first started working with clients, it was usually a case of quite a generic sort of routine, as in, be specified to what equipment they had, customized what their goals are, things like that. But it was usually like 2 to 3 sets, sometimes 4 sets of, 10 to 12. I kind of realize now, that's changed quite a bit. I'm thinking, okay, the absolute novice that doesn't have good mind muscle connection, they're going to benefit from more sets. They're going to learn the movement, learn to activate the muscles more frequently. You learn through repetition. So that's often something which I'll include in someone who's just starting up. Now, a trainer that's a bit more experienced, I'm going to have them doing maybe 2 sets of, I'd guess, somewhere between like 6 and 20 repetitions, depending on what their body's like at the time. What I'll try and get them to do is just control the weight. So I'm not focused on explosive lifts. It's just a case of moving it with your muscles, under load, under tension, allowing it to, contract the muscle fibers and stretch them out. So it's nothing revolutionary. It's pretty standard stuff. But I've been more of a proponent recently of tracking time under load or time under tension. So I found that you can still build the same amount of muscle regardless of how long you kind of train. So if you're doing, say, 40 seconds or say 120 seconds or 2 minutes, the results for me seem to be the same, providing that I hit that level of intensity where I can no longer move the weight safely. So there's more than one sort of road to Rome, you might say. So for me, I'm kind of thinking, I want to do this for a long period of time. I'm 28 years old. I want to train for a long period of time. So I'm thinking, well, I can get really strong. I don't have an issue lifting heavy weight, but heavyweight, then doing heavier weight than heavyweight, it gets to a point where it taxes the body so much, at least the joints. So for me, if I can make a lighter weight feel heavy, then it's even better. So I can still build the same amount of muscle, and that's the goal. So it's, when it comes to bodybuilding, guys, you're just trying to make the muscle work, make it hard. So if you've got more left in the tank, you haven't done enough. That's something we might go into, because I know you've been interviewing some guys recently, like talking about reps in reserve and RP scales and things like that. So
yeah, I echo that philosophy completely. I am always trying to use the least amount of weight possible to stimulate my muscles, and I think especially when you have something like, I don't have it to the same degree you do, but a back injury or a series of back injuries, you really are like, this is just so debilitating, both in terms of my training as well as my life and quality of life. I want to find ways to use less and less and less weight and stimulate the muscle. Like, I'm not in the gym. A lot of people say that their goal, I did a post about this a long time ago. People are like, I'm in the gym to get stronger. They say that, but I don't think most of them actually mean that. Like, they think getting stronger is this goal that will help them in life in general. And a lot of like studies on longevity and all-cause mortality are like, you need to be strong and you need to have good grip strength. And that's because it's hard to measure muscle mass. That's the only reason that those metrics come out on top in terms of longevity. So really, if you want to live a long time, like, you want to build muscle and retain muscle and bone and lean mass. And yes, to some extent, you do have to get stronger to do that. You have to progressively overload. But if you step into a gym and you lift a weight, there's a way to do it, which is, I'm going to try to lift the absolute most amount of weight I can for the most amount of reps. And there's a way to do it, which is, I'm going to try to stimulate this muscle as much as possible. And those are actually very different in practice, I find, at least at the advanced level. Maybe it's more similar for beginners. And especially, like, I see my strength in certain muscles almost as a detriment. Like, my legs are so strong. Like, I can easily do like a 5-second negative, pause at the bottom, and do like 4 or 5 plates for reps on the hacks, on the Cybex hack squat. And that sucks. Like, I wish I only needed 2 plates to do that. Like, I'm very weak in my chest in terms of my pressing movements, and that's awesome. That means I don't have to lug up 120-pound dumbbells every time I'm pressing. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting how other people come to that same philosophy over time.
yeah, I think we kind of get to the point where we understand the wear and tear it is on our body. So most gyms out there nowadays will generally tend to carry about maybe 120-pound dumbbells.
Yeah.
By the time you're lifting that weight, unless you're like Ronnie Coleman, you're probably better off in a machine in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And there's limitations for everything in training, but I do a lot of stuff with machines nowadays, and I think I'd still do it even if I wasn't like so messed up and injured. I'd still probably do the same thing. I've found that my injury rate is so low. I've only ever been injured really by dropping a dumbbell on my toe and like other things outside the gym. So I've been quite fortunate, touch wood, but
Yeah, that's good. And how has the recovery from your spinal fusion been?
Yeah, so the incision area is much better now. It seems pretty much bang on. The only issues I have really are I bend down too much, like right down to ground level. It seems to be that no matter how mobile, flexible I tried to be, it's just that sacrum, the the tailbone part of my body just doesn't like the tension at right at the bottom. So it means I've had to change my training a bit. Frustrating. Someone like you probably likes to go to the top tissue and go right down to the bottom and go back up and all that sort of thing. So it's a bit frustrating. So I've got limitations there. The new thing is the right hip is very painful. There's like a stabbing pain pretty much most of the time, if not all the time.
Oh,
Does wake me up in the night. And I did get it from surgery, I'm pretty sure. Because when I got out of bed from surgery, the right glute was like fired, like door. Like someone's just like got you there. That's what it feels like. But been trying different medications out, and I'm on something a bit more appropriate now, which is better for me. So I've had epidurals and injection things to try and fix it, but I've not had much luck yet. So I'm just waiting it out. I can still train somewhat, and I'm just gonna be so careful in recovery. So every decision I make day to day is based around recovery, really.
yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure having like a low inflammatory diet, carnivore diet, has also helped with your recovery overall tremendously.
Yeah, for sure. It's made it a lot easier. Like I could train 8 days post spinal fusion with no issues. I mean, I
Wow.
couldn't do like weights, but I could do a push up against something like the bed or something. A bit use my little Zimmer frame thing to move around. Not too bad, but yeah, it's a long recovery process. But I'm looking at longevity and sort of thinking, what can happen to me now? I can enjoy the rest of my life, or I can end up like Rory Coleman, minus the 8 Olympia titles. I'm using crutches and sticks and loads of medication all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'll have it done now, sort myself out, and just be really careful. So use this almost as a warning sign. So it's probably saved me from a lot of grief in the future, perhaps. So
Yeah. Yeah. You've got a long life ahead of you. And it's really good that you can have that mindset, because a lot of people just want to rush back and end up setting themselves further and further back.
for sure, yeah, you got to be patient with these things.
Yeah.
There's no rush. I mean, I'm looking at maybe 40, 50 more years of lifespan. I'd like to train for most of them.
Yeah. Hopefully. Me too. Yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, um, like, it seems like you're very much in the camp of high intensity, fatiguing the muscles as much as possible. What are your thoughts on reps in reserve, and using that type of methodology as well?
I think a lot of people struggle to use it just because the only way that you've reps reserves is if you do a lot of calculations and track a lot of data up to that point. So you'd know, okay, say I fail on 100 kilos and fail at 10 reps. Okay, that's it. It's my maximum. Now, if you're not moving at all, lying in bed, that's zero. So how are you going to work out what 90% is? Maybe 90% effort feels like 7 reps. Maybe the last 2 3 reps don't feel that bad. It's just you grind through it. Um, and sometimes, although subjective measures are useful for tracking things, I think sometimes just be a bit more objective. And I think some of the issues with this are the studies at hand aren't very well rated, not well crafted. So there's data out there which is saying, you can do 45 sets, that's the best. It's like, all about every permutation of that. So what if you spread that out a few weeks further? What if you took that study, got participants to train to failure each time? It's going to change drastically. And what I think they would need to do to sort of really underpin what is hard science is get some pro level bodybuilders that have been trained for a really, really long time, put them in, group A, group B, like 100 of each, I don't know, and get them to train, say, 10 sets or train 20 sets, but then get the 10-set ones to train really, really hard. So no reps in reserve at all. And get the other ones just to train, the recommendation, I think now some people are saying is, I think 2 to 3 reps in reserve. And what they'll probably find is to get much bigger past that point, you have to incrementally add to that stimulus. They'll probably maintain their mass on, less intensity, more sets, but to get much better, you really have to push it. So one person who comes to mind with this is someone called Jordan Peters from the UK. and he's a bodybuilder, massive guy, like probably one of the biggest guys around that I'd ever see. Um, and he just trains pretty much to at least technical muscular failure. But he also controls all his reps, and he's not doing 20 sets per body part. He's doing something like, broadly speaking, maybe 10 to 15. He's had to leverage volume so much because his risk of injury is so high from lifting such heavy weight. So he's had to add in intensify methods and things like that. So I'm not the biggest fan of reps in reserve just because it has so many limitations. I think there's better ways to go about it. Also, there's only one pro bodybuilder right now that uses reps in reserve as a measurement. So one out of so many. I know it's not a case of like, you should listen to what all the pro bodybuilders do because they do stupid stuff, but sometimes you can kind of look at the anecdotes and think they've all kind of realized they have to train pretty hard. There's always going to be a strong genetic component to it as well. I mean, I grew like a weed when I first started training, but now not so much. I have to train much harder. A lot of people will find that. So yeah, I'm more of a fan of just training at least to technical muscular failure when you can't move the weight anymore safely. Then just leave it at that. And if you want to add to that, you can do your drop set, rest pause, force negatives, force positive, whatever it is, you can add to it basically. So yes, that's kind of my standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think my thoughts are one, like you said, most people don't know what failure is, and so when you tell them to train to failure, they're actually training to 2 or 3 reps in reserve. They stop when it really burns, or they stop when the weight starts to slow down. They get scared. And so if you tell them to train with a few reps in reserve, they're going to actually be training with like 6 or more reps in reserve. So that's a problem. So I think for most people, it's hard to do. The other thing, I think most people use reps in reserve without knowing it. Like you mentioned that a lot of pro bodybuilders train to failure. I would argue that most of them actually use reps in reserve and say they're training to failure. The only people, it's actually, if you look at a lot of pro bodybuilders train, like Samson did, for instance, he stops way before failure. And, maybe it's because he has such a strong connection with the muscles that like way before he gets to failure, it's just burning like crazy and his muscles are pumped like crazy. And like for him, he doesn't need to go to failure. But yeah, I think a lot of people say they train to failure and they don't. So whether you know it or not, you may be using RIR. Like RIR, I don't think of it as a technique. I think of it more as like a definition. Like you're using a certain amount of weight, you're using a certain amount of steps, and you're using a certain RIR, whether you know it or not. I think for most people, the recommendation should be get as many reps as you can. I think that's a really good way to train. But I think if you get to a certain level and you find when you train to failure, you're so fatigued or you're getting injured more, or you find you have to deload all the time, or you have to cut your volume down so much that you're basically doing a strength training program, it can be intelligent to play with backing off a little bit and then working your way to failure over like weeks. That's the way I train, is basically like I'll deload, I'll train pretty easy for a week, and then I'll come in the gym in the first week back. I'll basically train until the reps slow down. And then each week I'll like add 5 to 10 pounds or a rep to an exercise. And inevitably I'll reach failure because you just can't do that forever. And then I'll know, okay, I'm done. Like time to deload because there's nothing more I could do the next week. And so that's kind of the way I train. But I think most pro bodybuilders are pretty stupid. And like if you told them to train that way, they would just like get confused. Like there's a reason most bodybuilders, even the ones who eat a lot of carbs, don't use macros. Like they have to get a prescribed meal plan from their coach of like, this is exactly what you're eating at each meal, because they're too dumb to do macros. Like
they want to eliminate the thought process. Yeah, it becomes more of a challenge. Like I've noticed myself, if I can prescribe a diet to someone that's on the carnivore way of eating, so much easier. We pick,
Yeah.
1 to 5 different foods. Here's the grams. Well, there you go. Put it in your fridge and eat that within a day. That's so much easier than like, oh, I've got 40 grams of carbs left. I mean, you can have this much rice, then this much vegetable. It's a nightmare to track. So that's one of the benefits of the carnivore diet. It's so much easier.
Totally agree. Absolutely. And you've been doing a lot of interesting videos around like kind of calling out different people in the fitness industry, which I think is really cool. Like saying Mike Israetel is confused about carbs, and I think Tristan Lee bulking on a plant-based diet. What are some of the things you're seeing in the fitness industry that you think are misguided or possibly harmful to people they're communicating to?
I think a lot of it starts from the fact that people don't realize what their own potential is. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. They don't understand their limit. Now, if you look at, for example, in that case of Tristan Lee, he's a young Asian American gentleman. I think he's about 21, 22 years old, something. He's got quite a bit of muscle. He is muscular by all means. He is also pretty ripped. But I think it's not that his diet before, which is the carnivore diet, was ineffective. It's just that he's really hit that mark where to get much bigger, you end up having to use a load of juice. You have to end up eating a lot more food. And I think with him, his lifestyle, how busy he is, the idea that he has to be so lean on camera all the time, that probably played a part in it. So that's why he's to change his ways. I think a lot of the time as well, sometimes when people get hooked on what they see everyone else doing, get big, you have to eat the Marcus Rule diet, which is like 6 meals a day, chicken, rice, and, the reality is most pro bodybuilders are eating pizza and donuts most days, You can't eat that much rice. It's too much, clean. It's like clean food, so it's hard to eat that much food. So I think a lot of times it's lack of transparency. When you actually go onto the Instagram, social media, and you see what guys are eating, most days it's like donuts and pizzas and stuff. It's very apparent to me. So I think ultimately people are trying to achieve something that maybe isn't achievable by them. They're looking for all the routes around it. I think some of the most obvious things as well, like, you need carbs to build muscle. I did build most of my muscle on a diet that happened to have carbohydrates in it. I feel like if I got rid of those carbohydrates in the past and replaced them with fat, I'd have achieved the same result, if I'm honest. I really honestly think that. It sounds a bit like contradictory to what the mainstream media would say, but I don't believe that you need carbohydrates to build substantial amounts of muscle. An example of that is where I built my most muscular physique yet, according to my scales that I've been using for years now. The bioimpedance sort of scales, and I sort of was like, well, I've done this, drinking raw milk, eating eggs, having beef brisket, having like whey protein, stuff like that, like butter, basic stuff like that. And I managed to build my most muscular physique without adding carbohydrates in. So I almost feel like if I did, do a carb up sort of thing, inflame my body with loads of additional glycogen and inflammatory water and things like that, then I'd probably make that number even higher. It'd be not a realistic number. It wouldn't amount to anything had I taken that carbohydrate out over a longer period of time. But I think some of the other things as well is the idea that you have to train so often. I used to train something like 15 to 20 hours per week when I was younger. So I was an athlete, so I was a sprinter. I'd do a lot of activity. I'd cycle to and from the gym. I'd be at the gym and do cardio. I'd be there 5-6 days a week, sometimes 7. I didn't get more results. I mean, I was lean, but I wasn't getting much bigger in relation to like how hard I was training, because I wasn't getting much bang for my buck. So I think oftentimes people overdo it, and that's kind of where I think Tristan Lee went. So I think he said somewhere, I'm not exactly sure, but something like 25,000 steps he's doing a day. Now, I've had 3 postmen that I've worked with in the last few months, and they're doing about 25 to 30,000 steps per day. And that's their job, to walk around, deliver a post. That tells me he just needs to calm down and stop doing so much. That's how he's going to get in better shape into like building more muscle. But one other thing I'd like to mention is this is quite a useful tool to people. Either tool's not perfect, but it does give people an indication. Is to work out someone's fat-free mass calculation. So that's something I find quite useful for people that are questioning, can I get much bigger? Can I hit my plateau or not? You can work it out. So you can go on think the website's like fatfreemasscalculator.org or something. And you put in your body fat, your height, your weight, and it'll say, yeah, you're about fat-free mass index of X amount. I think I recommend to people to be about 20 to 21 for their male. Then you're looking at the bodybuilders once you get to like past 25, 26, 27. You can say, by standard, by measure, that you're very muscular or you're not very muscular. So people can use that as a quick little reference range, I think. So it's quite useful as well.
Yeah, that's a really good guide. And what are some things? And by the way, I completely agree that for the vast majority of people, you're going to reach the same end destination whether you eat carbs or not, building muscle. I think the body is just so efficient at converting protein to glucose in the amount you need, and you really adapt to it. And when I was bodybuilding full carnivore, I had no problems with energy and doing long bodybuilding workouts. Like my endurance was great. And it's because it had been three years of carnivore and several years before that of low carb. And my body was just so efficient at using protein for glucose that it felt great. And my muscles were full. I had no problem with pumps or anything like that. So I definitely think it's a great way to go. And Jonathan, what are some things you've learned from working with clients the last few years, like things that you've needed to tweak for different individuals, ways in which people are different and you need to customize? I'm curious how that's been for you.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to do initially when working with someone is to work out how much food they need to maintain what they're currently doing. So unless someone comes to me and says, okay, Jonathan, I want you to get me in shape within 4 weeks, 99% of the time, I'm going to put them on what I think would be relatively baseline sort of diet. So something which can work out what food they tolerate well and how much of it they can eat and not get sick, basically. And there's obviously different cases where someone will have to sort of cut body fat a bit faster, so it would be a more aggressive approach. The main thing I've noticed really is just to keep things somewhat consistent. So I think as soon as you start giving people very complicated plans where you're upping and raising and lowering and doing all the stuff with different foods and putting different grams amounts and things, complicates it for a lot of people. One thing I'm not the biggest fan of, because it's not that simple, is because, is the fact that I don't really recommend staggering food intake. I think your food requirement is about equal most days. Obviously, it goes up a little bit sometimes. If you work out Monday and that's the only day you work out, you're going to probably have a bit more protein that day, but the rest of the day should be somewhat similar. And it is a 36, 40 hour sort of period anabolic window, so to speak. So yeah, I think you shouldn't be too focused on change everything such a minute level. I think that's where people go wrong. It creates like decision fatigue, Like a lot of people that I've worked with, they just want, what do I eat and how much do I eat? Okay, put it in the fridge, cook it, eat it the next day, check in a week later. And that's kind of how I work, and it seems to work really well, as long as I just stick with the diet. I think as well, a lot of people sometimes have issues with previous coaches where they don't give them a diet that they can actually sustain. A lot of people I work with are people probably 15% body fat for males trying to get to like 10%. And they're just doing that through just very gradually increasing the food deficit. So I might start them off on 160 protein, 160 fat, hypothetically. Usually I'll just reduce the fat and that'll work quite well. People start having issues with like their digestion, in which case I change it. Sometimes there's more tools in the box that you can use. So I think just doing it's a bit like training. It's like minimal effective dose. Still, you need someone to reap a reward and make it as little stress as possible. I think people try to overcomplicate it. And I've had people recently, one lady I was coaching recently, a phone consult, she gets through to me probably every 2 to 3 weeks. And she's shrunk her waist by, it looks like about 8 inches in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, like 6 weeks. And she looks physically very different, like a different person. I didn't even ask her how much weight she lost, but I didn't care. Like you can see, she probably had a swollen liver, maybe some internal damage, but her visceral fat's gone right down. And it's just really simple approaches. She's not measuring anything. She's not tracking anything. She's saying, okay, I'm going to put my lamb here, my, pork belly, whatever it is. I have this much butter. She's not measuring, like tracking, like meticulously. She's just eating a sensible amount of food, applying some very simple, basic home workout stuff, no equipment, 15, 20 minutes, 3 times a week. She's made tremendous progress because she's stuck with the diet. And that's what I think the key thing is. The diet itself is very easy to make for a lot of people. I think fine-tuning past the point of lean to very lean is where you get the issues, but it's where a good coach is very helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's all about consistency. And I think people very often want to make that drastic change, or change a bunch of variables at once. Or when you're coaching them, they're not satisfied if you aren't changing something every week. But it really is all about consistency, and just you're almost tricking the body into thinking nothing is happening. Well, small changes are happening, because your body wants to return to homeostasis. So you don't want to put it under too much stress, or that just halts progress completely. So yeah, I can tell you're really helping people with that.
Yeah, it's always a simple approach, and I'd say 95% of my clients have at least 2 autoimmune diseases.
Wow.
So I'm not trying to throw them the deep end deal, just like tapering away, getting the results they want very slowly.
Yeah, that's very intelligent. Well, Jonathan, this has been fantastic. It's really great to connect and chat with you again. Thank you so much for taking the time. Where can folks follow you, get in touch with you if they want to work with you? And I'll, of course, have links to everything in the show notes as well.
Sure. Thank you as well also for having me. It's been a pleasure as always. Where you can find me, compositionconsultant.com. I've got links to coaching packages, some ebooks, diet training plans, and consultations. All pretty affordable in my opinion. Just to be in the UK, it's a bit cheaper than it is in the US for the most part. Pretty good availability for the most part. Instagram as well, which is Composition Consultant. My YouTube is Carnivore Muscle, but you can find me at the link Composition Consultant. You should find me if you just type my name in. Been on other people's channels as well, so usually I'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah, excellent. Great. Well, thanks again, Jonathan, and hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find The Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.